Let's move on then to Leagues Cup, where a Sunshine State derby is underway for a spot in not only the Leagues Cup final, but also a spot in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Messi and friends are back from injury or rest or whatever to give a big push for another trophy in this tournament against their in-state rivals. And like in the last game, the referees were under massive scrutiny. If you went and watched the highlights of Leagues Cup, you wouldn't have had any idea because they didn't show it as expected. So shout out to our boys over at LPO for the clips. So because we headed to Twitter to find the real highlights, and again, not in any order, just kind of the way that I found them. We're going to start with the penalty kick in the 77th minute. David Brecalo, or Brecalo, however you want to pronounce it, was sent off with a second yellow offense for a hold on Allende that led to the penalty kick. Now, let's start with the penalty kick. Was it a penalty kick? I could see why it was given, right? I don't know if there, and in like in the last game, I don't know if there's enough to say the clear and obvious error wasn't, or the clear and obvious threshold was not met to overturn that. I think that's where they're at. I see Allende go up. I see him, struggle to get one arm free, diving to get a header that floats to Gallese. Referee points to the spot. Is there enough to overturn that? I don't think so. Do I think it's a yellow? I don't think it's a yellow either. To be fair, I think it's a harsh yellow. But the problem is the yellow before that was even more harsh, right? Brecalo is running with Rodrigo de Paul down the line or down the center of the field, and he's putting his arm up to feel behind him to make sure he's got space to shield the ball or whatever he was planning on doing. And Rodrigo de Paul puts his hands to his face and falls to the ground. Upon easy replay, it was very clear there was no contact ever made. Referee was duped, gave Brecalo a yellow. Down in the 77th minute, Brecalo holds on to Allende, given another soft yellow, and sent off. Then I think this might have happened a little bit before that play, but Ivan Angulo's on the ball on the left side of the field. He's going up against Sergio Busquets, cuts in on his right foot inside the box. Busquets very clearly impedes his process, takes down Angulo, fouls him, and the referee doesn't give a penalty. I don't know what they were seeing or why this wasn't brought to review. I give this as a foul every day and twice on League Cup semifinal day. I mean, it was, to me, very clear and obvious. Again, I don't know what the VAR is doing here, but the ref didn't give it. We played on. The last questionable challenge is the two-footed Ian Frey challenge, right? And again, it's Ivan Angulo. He's always in the middle of this sort of stuff. Clearly, his pace was causing tons of problem, but Ian Frey is tracking him down, and he sends this two-footed jumping stud showing challenge to try and win the ball back. He doesn't make any contact with Angulo, and he does win the ball. But for me, if I'm a referee, I see a reckless challenge that endangers the safety of an opponent if he makes contact. At the very least, it's a foul and it's a yellow. If he made contact and went through Angulo, it's a red. But at the very least, because it's reckless and dangerous, it's at the very minimum a yellow. But the fact that there was no call for even a foul here is crazy to me. So then again, this brought up these ideas of, oh, the game is rigged for Messi and they need Messi in finals to drive eyeballs and all this sort of stuff. Again, you're not going to get me to buy in on that. You're just not. Again, I think it's much more common that referee standards have dropped significantly. I think it's also important to note that the referee in that game against there was not an MLS referee, right? To me, based off of quick research, and I might be wrong here, it seems like he's from the Guatemalan League. Why he's reffing in Leagues Cup, I have no idea, but that's what my quick research does here, and maybe their standard is just as low as ours, right? To say that it's Messi League soccer and they're rigging the game for Messi, I don't buy it. Right. I don't buy the idea that it's intentionally being done. I think it's much more likely that referees are getting things wrong. And I know people are going to point and say, oh, well, how can you have this happen in one area and this happen in the other and this happen here? And like it's all lying out there right there. I think people are so desperate to see controversy and something to talk about when it comes to insanity like this that they will believe it more easily than understanding that that's not actually the case, right? The way, if Connor were here, we'd be talking about this is in probability, right? Every event in the history of the world has a probability of happening. Something over one over something, right? If you were trying to figure out what the probability that all of this stuff would happen in, this sequence of time, the probability is never zero. You cannot get to a probability of zero. There's always a chance it will happen. So in my brain, I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, it's rare. I don't understand why it's all happening, but I don't believe that it's impossible that it could happen just because all the referees are bad, because we know MLS refereeing and CONCACAF refereeing. I mean, guys, come on. Watch CONCACAF Champions Cup. What are we talking about here? How many times do I say you just got CONCACAF because the referees have no idea what they're doing? It's not rigged. They all just suck. Now, again, the problem is MLS doesn't do itself any favors because they're not smart. Go to their page and look up their reaction posts to when Inter Miami is playing versus when Seattle Sounders is playing. Marco Pasalic, 14 goals across all competitions. This one meant more. Clapping emoji. Messi buries PK. Orlando are down to 10 men. We're level in the League Cup semis. And then, oh my Messi, all in caps. Messi might have just won it. Wow, 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 wow. And then a bunch of letters that they cannot, that just show that they're freaking out over the fact that Messi scored again. Game over. Miami are headed to the League Cup final. Okay, they're freaking out over Lionel Messi. Then you go to Seattle. It is Sounders secure their spot in the League Cup final. Check mark. They don't do themselves any favor the way that they handle their social media. The fact that they are outwardly just freaking out over anything Messi does after a game that it seems very clear refereeing helped Inter Miami in this game doesn't help them. It's the same thing from the Vancouver game where you're sitting here saying, "Oh yeah, we don't we're more happy that is signing Thomas Muller because it's getting us followers than what he's doing on the field." They just don't get their engagement. I don't understand who's sitting there and saying this is the stuff we need to tweet or who has control of this stuff, but they're actively giving fuel to their haters and their anti-MLS crowd who are sitting here saying not a real soccer league. Because you're sitting here and basically outlining saying you have obsessions over certain players and a focus on things that aren't the sporting aspect. And in that sense, they have a fair gripe. They do. And we hate to say that, but they do. MLS's control of their social media and the way that they go about looking at the game is not the way we want it to be. Is it necessary? You could argue that it is, and I would hear that argument. Is it necessary to vocalize it the way that they have over the last couple of weeks? No. Keep it in your pocket, prepare it for an end of the fiscal year meeting, and just tweet out all the stuff about the sport. That's all you need to do. I don't know why it's so difficult they keep messing this up, but here we are. The problem with, and I want to go back to the Orlando Miami game in terms of the decisions themselves. The problem aren't the decisions themselves, it's the limitations of VAR. Per the rules, you cannot review second yellows, you cannot review first yellows, you can't review anything unless it is going to lead to a direct red card or a change in a key game moment, such as a goal or basically a goal or a sending off. Those are the two, right? Or I think it's wrongful identity, whatever. The fact that everything that happened here were on yellows, right? Brecolo's first yellow was not a yellow, but you couldn't review it because VAR says you can't. The second yellow, probably not a yellow either. Foul, whatever, right? The only way that gets overturned is if the foul is called not a foul. It doesn't reach the clear and obvious threshold, can't overturn it. But should it have been a yellow? Probably not. But the fact is we got here to a yellow because they couldn't review the first yellow, and now they can't review the second yellow, and he's off. It's a limitation of the VAR. The PK on Angulo, I'm speechless about. I think it's a bad call. I think they've missed it. Referees miss calls all the time. But that one, a bit less explainable. And then the two-footed challenge on Ian Frey, right? I'm not giving that a red. I would give it a yellow on the field. The problem is because he didn't do either, it's either we play on or he gets straight red. Because they're not giving him straight red, they can't do anything about it. The limitations of the VAR rulebook have put us in this scenario, and it's frustrating. I get it. Because you want every call to be right, especially in favor of your team. But the way the rules are written, in the same way that Mascherano was able to be on an earpiece the whole time and coach his team from the field, the way the rules are written allow this to happen. So at the end of the day, they need to change, plain and simple. And the problem is because VAR already has so many gripes against it, I don't know if it ever will. But we'll see how it goes. At the end of the day, I'm not seeing an MLS or a Leagues Cup rigged set of games for any one player. I see poor refereeing standards as they've been dropping over the last couple of years, and then MLS doubling down and being ridiculously idiotic with their social media post. Those two things are very bad separately. And then you put them together, and it's very easy to draw this conclusion. But the difficulty that would come from having to, in the moment, make decisions that are going to alter games like that, I don't believe is happening because it just sounds ridiculous. You would feel like somebody who left refereeing at some point would have come out and said, "Yeah, this is ridiculous. Don't do that." Right? Tons of referees have retired out of MLS. If it was the case that these calls were being changed for individual teams or players, somebody would have gone on a you know, no face altered voice interview and said, "Yeah, it's very clear that this is happening and we need to stop it." Right? But I don't know. You just can't get me on taking games and making them in favor of one player or one team. Can't do it.